Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Hold on to the edge of your seats because you are in for quite the ride. It's time for the Granada Forum Radio Show. Right now, live on air with your host, Granada, Wendy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Granada Forum radio program. Tonight we're going to do some roundtabling, a lot of issues to be discussed on some various subject matters, so it's going to be quite interesting, actually. So that'll be good. Next week with us, we will have Deborah Tavares. It will be a barn burner. Just to let you guys know, and I'll get back to this real quick, too. Revolution Radio, the #1 commercial-free, listener-supported internet talk radio station in the world, and we're located at freedomslips.com. That's freedomslips.com. And Nick, are you there, handsome?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
and don't forget the other search, which is revolution.radio.
There you go. Yes, revolution.radio. Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Nick, on that one. Yeah, revolution.radio. And Rich, are you there, our producer?
Yes, I am.
Good, I'm glad. All right, so everything seems to be going good. That's always a thumbs up, and very grateful for that. And we'd like to thank Red, too, who's listening. Red, for everything you did 2 weeks ago at the Cancer Control Society. We had a lot of fun there. We want to, again, thank Cancer Control for being live at the Cancer Control Society. If you go to www.cancercontrolsociety.com, that's www.cancercontrolsociety.com. Their phone number is 323-663-7801. That's 323-663-7801. You can get books and tapes and of all the lectures for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and they're available on the cancercontrolsociety.com. And that's they're gonna love that. So you can call them. They'll send that out to you. All kinds of good stuff there. And we want to thank them so much again, Cancer Control Society. Also, too, we will, too, probably go through some of the people that helped us at Cancer Control. Definitely make sure that they get some notarization, and we'll get back to them very shortly, and we'll do some great health things coming up soon at the Granada Forum. And we'll talk about some, we're going to list a bunch of health stuff, so it'd be good. Also, too, we're filming the National Health Solution Expo, and we'll be there live, and that will be December 15th and 16th, 2018, at the LAX Marriott at 5855 West Century Boulevard, LA, California, 90045, and the phone number is 562-212-3479, 562-212-3479, and you can go to www.healthsolutionsexpo.com. That's www.healthsolutionsexpo.com, and all kinds of information there at the National Health Solution Expo. All right. And I want to thank them very much for that one. And again, Cancer Control, we can't say enough. And we will, I promise, I will do a show with all the people that helped us and give us some stuff. We will definitely, I promise I will get back to everybody and do some updates on all the products and some stuff like that. So I will make sure that's on for a future show. Okay.
Yeah, and here's one of the things, too. One of the great things about the Cancer Control Society this year was the Japanese representatives came over from, the Japan version of Cancer Control Society, so they were there, too. Yeah, and I didn't know that the whole thing had gone really international that way. But even Frank was telling us that that they're doing their own thing there too. So I mean, this is really kind of starting to get on a real
international basis. Absolutely, and that there's tremendous amounts of other solutions than chemotherapy and radiation. Much more answers for so many people. If you do go to Cancer Control Society, their website, and check them out, and get some information on all kinds of alternative therapies, and just so many out there, ladies and gentlemen, you can't see straight. Just so many. Okay, we're going to do a roundtable tonight, and also, too, next week we will have Deborah Tavares. You can check out her website at www.stopthecrime.net. That's www.stopthecrime.net. stopthecrime.net and check her out. Great stuff there. Also, too, I want to say something. Deborah Tavares and Carrie Cassidy did something together just a day or so ago, I believe, at www.projectcamelot.org. That's www.projectcamelot.org. Check out, that's a part 1 and part 2. They were talking about the coastal sea lands when there seemed to be some government problems there, and then they got put back up. But they unbelievable stuff going on. You might want to check that out at projectcamelot.org or www.stopthecrime.net, and great stuff there too. Okay, and so we're good over there. And by the way, we just want to say the people of North Carolina and South Carolina, we wish them health and happiness and safety for the rest of their hurricane, which is causing problems on the East Coast. So to the people down there, prayers and thoughts always to them. Okay, cool. Now, John, I know you're probably the eager beaver, and Nick, I know you probably have a few things probably to say, but I know John is chomping at the bit right now. And I know, John, I know you got a couple of issues, and one of the issues, if I'm not mistaken, is the KLM that took place is it in the 80s or the 90s, John?
It occurred in 1983, on September 1st.
Yeah, okay. So I know there was an anniversary a couple of weeks back, but we, of course, we already had scheduled stuff, and we could not get out of that. But John, can you maybe give some people some introduction about the KLM, and then I know you're going to talk about one other subject, so no problem. But give a introduction to the KLM situation and what happened then and what's happened during and now.
Okay, I'll try to cover that. By the way, I also want to mention on this program about Idlib, Syria, where 3 million people are about to be killed by the Russian Air Force, the Syrian Air Force, and Iranian Air Force, if something is not done very soon. All Washington has done, by that I mean the White House, and more specifically National Security Advisor John, his middle name is
Bolton?
Robert, and I'm just blank on his last name, but it starts with, I think, a B.
Yeah, Bolton?
John R. Bolton stated that if it should be discovered that Syria is using chemical weapons on these people in Idlib, in northwestern Syria, that we would take serious action against them. However, what they fail to point out is there is going to be a barrage of bombs falling on Idlib, which are going to kill millions of people. To me,
but John, you're not allowed to say that, John.
Well, that's why I'm saying it.
You can only point out the parts of the narrative that fit the story, so that they can go ahead and kill everybody over there.
That's right. So hypothetically, they could kill everyone, and maybe later on, after the fact, then find chemical weapons. But that's a little bit too late.
Well, how can you save them if you don't kill them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that seems to be the pervasive attitude. It's like, we can't save them if we don't blow them up.
Yeah. So it's basically double talk, and Bolton was basically saying, we're going to stand by the sidelines while you kill these 3 million people with aerial bombs. But if by chance chemical weapons should come on the scene, then we'll take some action, maybe throw a little tomahawk here and there, like we did before, which is basically nothing, if that should occur. Now, getting back to KAL Flight 007, if the American people had only known the truth about KAL Flight 007, in all probability, there would not be an invasion of Afghanistan. nor would there be an Afghan war going on today, because all of these things tie into one another. But there was actually several deliberate attempts to keep this information from the public. And to be quite honest, I did not find out about it until this millennium. But September 1st commemorated the 35th anniversary of KAO Flight 007 on September 1st, which was actually August 31st, where we are located. But because they're on the other side of the international date line, it was September 1st where it occurred. And we were all under the impression that a Russian Sukhoi interceptor had fired some rockets and destroyed that jumbo jet with all passenger and crew aboard in midair. However, that was not the case at all, because there was minor damage from one of the M14 rockets launched by the Russians, but the plane was able to make a rather impromptu emergency ditch landing at a small island called Monaran, west of Sakhalin. And 50 minutes after the plane ditched in shallow water, the captain of that aircraft had contacted Narita International Airport in Japan and confirmed that they had made a safe landing, and all 269 crew and passengers survived that ordeal. However, shortly thereafter, that group of people, by that I mean the passengers and crew on that particular flight, KAO Flight 007, were captured by the Soviet Coast Guard and handed over to the Soviet KGB, who then separated the children from the parents permanently and placed practically all of the 62 Americans and other foreigners aboard that flight in various labor camps along the Gulag throughout the Soviet Union. However, apparently one person was able to make a short phone call to his girlfriend here in the States, which said in essence, darling, I just wanted to let you know that you will probably never hear from me during the rest of your life, so make plans accordingly. And then he was cut off. There was another call that was mentioned on Kogo, that's a radio station in San Francisco, of a person who received a message on their phone call of a similar nature, but because no one was home to answer it, they were unable to converse with the person before they were cut off. So there were apparently 2 attempts to reach parties here in the United States. Now, keep in mind that was back in 1983. Now, the Soviet Union ends in about 1989, and Boris Yeltsin comes to power. And during that time, the first Bush administration was in charge in Washington. And what you need to understand are some of the people who were involved in the Bush administration at that time. And one of those persons happened to be Dr. Condoleezza Rice, who was a special assistant to President George Herbert Walker Bush. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but when she signed on in 1989 with the Bush administration, there were certain reasons why she was chosen for that position. First of all, she could speak Russian exceedingly well, almost fluently. Her specialty was Soviet and East European affairs. And she had already made negotiations and transactions on behalf of Chevron regarding the oil and gas leases for reserves in the Caspian Sea, which later became known as the Caspian Aral Basin in landlocked Central Asia. Keep in mind that word landlocked. By that we mean that part of the world has no direct access to the ocean, which means they had a product which was very good, but the only problem is for that product to take on value, you have to be able to transport it to the ocean where you are able to take advantage of other cheap means of transportation. Otherwise, you have basically a product which has very little value. Keep in mind also that in 1991, Dr. Condoleezza Rice became a member of the board of directors of Chevron. Now, to acquire such a high position in one of the largest multinational corporations in the world, you would have to do something very beneficial for Chevron. And of course, keep in mind those particular transactions that were going on with Moscow regarding the oil and gas reserves in the Caspian Basin. Now, Boris Yeltsin, who was the first Russian president after the demise of the Soviet Union, came to Washington in 1992. And during that time, he made a statement in response to what Senator Helms had made a few months earlier in 1991. Yeltsin's statement was made, I believe, in either June or July of 1992. And in that statement, he basically said that it is true that there were survivors from that particular flight, but unfortunately, that was several years ago. It is listed in the archives, but things have been so well concealed, he said, that it would be almost impossible to track them down if they were still alive. Now, keep in mind that going back to 1983...
Okay, John, where are we going with this?
Well, we're about to find out that Dr. Condoleezza Rice was in charge of Boris Yeltsin at that time. She physically prevented him from going directly into the Oval Office to see the president, and she took the communication, and she altered the communication, which more or less came out as basically, yes, it's true, U.S. servicemen from previous wars were taken into the Soviet Union, which changed the whole picture completely. And as a result, there was nothing ever mentioned about KAL Flight 007 to the public. They were only talking about former GIs from the Korean War, from the Vietnam War, from World War II, who might have been taken into the Gulag, the various prison labor camps in the Soviet Union, which was in Russia. Okay, so she falsified that information. Do you have any idea why? Because she wanted the oil interests to continue, especially Chevron and other multinational operations, to continue in the Caspian Aral Basin. And this. Okay.
So what are you trying to say? That Condoleezza Rice was basically part of the globalist cabal that we are dealing with again, on probably a more massive scale than we did before, but after Obama, it just became ridiculous. I mean, this is kind of stuff that, everybody that we know, going back through the Obama administration, the Bush administration, Clinton and Bush 1, Reagan and the rest of them, we already know that they're all part of this big globalist cabal that we're all have been trying to expose. I mean, Alex Jones has done it. Bill Cooper was brilliant at doing it before he got killed. and everything. So, Condoleezza Rice's past is really not going to be surprising to anybody, at least not to anybody who's listening to our show, I hope.
Yeah. Well, in doing research on Condoleezza Rice, I find out that her mentor was Joseph Corbell, who just happened to be the father of Madeleine Albright.
Well, of course.
Yeah. And so, in reality, a few years go by when we have the Clinton administration, and after that, keep in mind that Chevron and the other multinational oil corporations wanted to have a pipeline going out of landlocked Central Asia to overseas markets. And one of the proposals was a pipeline that would go from basically Kazakhstan through Turkmenistan into western and through western Afghanistan, into Pakistan, into the Arabian Sea, which flows into the Indian Ocean, which would give them the overseas access they needed. Unfortunately, the Taliban were in control of Afghanistan at that time.
And this is where the Soviets came in and invaded Afghanistan, which happened all during the 80s.
And then the Charlie Wilson War.
No. The war you're talking about went from 1979 to 1989. That was the Afghan war with the Soviet Union.
Right.
Now, let's go forward to the year 2001, when we have George W. Bush as the President of the United States.
You mean W. Jr.?
Yeah, George W. Bush.
Yeah, you didn't say that before. You said George W. Bush. You got to clarify that because there's two.
You got to say senior, junior.
No, I thought the first time I said George Herbert Walker Bush. Okay, that.
Boy, I always just say George Senior.
Okay.
Makes it easier.
Okay, the year's 2001. As soon as she becomes the National Security Advisor, she arranges, without our knowledge, for U.S. troops to be deployed in every central nation that bordered along the northern Afghan border. U.S. troops were deployed very early in the year 2001, way before 9/11. But as soon as 9/11 occurred, former Soviet troops, Russian troops, Central Asian troops, and U.S. troops invaded Afghanistan.
Right. So all the chess pieces on the board were already in place.
Exactly.
Right.
And keep in mind, if the American people ever found out how those Americans were treated by the Russians, the former Soviets, after they were captured, after safely surviving that ditch landing off of Monaran Island, their children separated permanently from them. Can you imagine the ordeals that those American women went through, and the men too? How they were tortured, probably raped, degraded in every way imaginable, but we never had a clue that they were even alive. We were under the impression at the time that they had all been destroyed in midair. But a few days after that incident, I happened to be listening to a business program on television, a nationwide program, in which the CEO of PepsiCo or Pepsi-Cola was invited. And I called in a question that went nationwide. I said, if it should be proven without a doubt that the Soviet Union deliberately attacked that aircraft over international waters, would you still continue to do business in the Soviet Union? And he just gave us double talk, basically, because, that certainly could not have occurred. The Russians would never do anything like that. The Soviets would never stoop to...
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I served in the Marine Corps during the Cold War. We knew everything that the Soviets were capable of doing, and they were going to do.
Right.
So, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the American people were kept in the dark. A good.
Well, at this point, I don't think the American people are capable of believing anything outside of what the mainstream media is telling them anyway. So, you know.
Right.
But John, no, you said there were kids.
Say again, Wendy.
You said that there were some kids aboard that flight too.
Oh, several, yes.
Okay,
there were many children aboard.
Right. Yes. Now, some of these kids were put into orphanages or adopted out?
Some of them, yes.
Now, these people would be grown. These people would be grown people now. I mean, eventually, when the Soviet Union fell, did some of these people call their loved ones, or did they, go into a neutral country that they could check out on the computer?
Well, unfortunately, there's only one source that is providing most of this information, and I don't know if they are in operation anymore. The Israelis were very helpful. There was a man by the name of Abram Shifrin, who formerly was in control of one of these KGB prisons or labor camps himself, but later he was able to relocate to Israel, and there he set up an organization which basically interviewed all Soviet Jews, Russian Jews that came to Israel to get information. And the information that they got was fabulous. They were able to put together the pieces of everything that I've shared with you tonight. Now, I did not mention that in the Karaganda industrial area of Kazakhstan, Congressman Larry McDonald was cited several times. But the prize or the motive was not Larry McDonald, then Congressman, a Democratic congressman from the United States, but rather Senator Jesse Helms, who just happened to be, at that time, chairman of the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Latin America. Because what the American people were unaware of was that during this time period, the former Soviet Union, under the regime of Andropov at the time, was planning its second missile crisis, which required a stopover at Grenada for its very large, giant transport, so large it could almost carry a submarine. But its cargo consisted basically of a completely or fully integrated mobile launch site, which would carry the control panels, the launching equipment, as well as the intermediate range ballistic missile that could fire within a radius of 3,300 nautical miles, and of course a thermonuclear warhead. And from Grenada, it would refuel and be able to go all the way to a clandestine airfield that was being constructed north of Managua at a place called Punta Huete, spelled Huete, which was probably actually a German word, heute, which means now or today, because the East German Stasi and the Soviet Spetsnaz pacified that area. When I say pacified, that means they killed all of the peasant people that lived in that rural area.
Okay, John. Thanks for all the information. It was really, really great.
I'd like to ask one more question, Nick. So, what did Jesse Helms have to say about that, Nick? John.
Well, when I saw him face to face in 1986, he was a little puzzled himself. I said, are you aware that you were the primary target? And he said, no. But he said, I was originally scheduled to be on that flight, KAL Flight 007 from New York, but due to some other business transactions that needed to be taken care of, I had to, at the last minute, change to another flight, and he left from Dallas, Texas, on another Korean airline, which followed shortly behind KAL Flight 007. In fact, at Anchorage, Alaska, where both planes refueled, they had a chance to chat with each other at the waiting room at that airport before KAL Flight continued on its flight.
No, John, he knew about the people being taken.
Oh, yes. Yes. In fact, some of the young children that were on that flight, they came over to where he was sitting down with Dr. Larry McDonald in the waiting room. Oh, he was very much aware. We have a complete list of all Americans that were aboard that flight. The youngest child was about 4 months, and they ranged up into their late teens, early adults ages. Now, there were only 62 Americans aboard that flight out of the 269 crew and passengers, but it was a significant number. And keep in mind, there were also children from other foreign countries aboard that flight as well. And as soon as they were all captured, they were all separated and placed in orphanages according to basically race and culture. We know a lot about it, but you look on Google, and all you're going to find is the plane was fired upon in midair and completely destroyed, just as I believed up until about the year at least 2005.
Wow, that's quite a story, John.
Yes, it is. But if the American people had known about that, thanks to Condoleezza Rice's cover-up, in all probability, we would not be doing business with the Russians, nor would there be that invasion into Afghanistan, which became our longest war that's still going on.
Correct, yeah.
And
weren't we supposed to be done with that already?
Yeah, you think?
Well, no, wasn't there supposed to be a whole thing with Kim Jong-un where we were supposed to sign an end to the armistice and actually end the entire war between us, but it didn't happen because then he did the same. He did the same thing that his predecessors did, which was, yeah, I'll sign it, and then everybody goes down, sit down at the table, and then they go, well, but I want all these concessions, and you have no choice but to walk away.
Yeah, but there's even a bigger picture, Nick, which I'm sure you're aware of. Basically, North Korea is just the proxy of Russia, because in further investigation, we found out that the rocket engines were all constructed and manufactured in the industrial area of Moscow. Some other components from Belarus, just west of Russia, and some components even from China. But, of course, you're never told this. But those missiles that Korea has do have the capacity to strike any part of the United States. And Trump's doing the best he can under these conditions while fighting these all kinds of petty wars with... Are
you kidding me? He's fighting his own party at this point. He's not just fighting all these petty wars. He's fighting his own party.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, and that's the one thing I always wanted to get to with Donald Trump, is why the hell are we still over in the Middle East to begin with? Why are we still fighting Syria that hasn't done anything to us? Why don't we actually get a president, and I know that Donald Trump wasn't my first pick to begin with, but why the hell don't we get a president in there who actually looks at the Constitution and says, we're not supposed to be doing all this stuff. I mean, Ron Paul was the perfect pick for that one, and when you matched up me and him together, it was always a 96 to 98% agreement rate on how we should be conducting everything. So, there was a little bit of margin where we may not have agreed on things, but why are we still Donald Trump to me is absolutely brilliant because he was the anti-establishment guy.
Yes.
He was the guy, regardless if you were Democrat or Republican, he was not the guy who was going to be your choice. And simply because he ran on the Republican ticket, all the Democrats are like losing their minds right now, and every one of them is now a warrior for the Constitution, even though they all hate it. Their entire agenda was to bring down the Constitution of the United States, and so was the establishment Republicans. But you never get any one of them to say that.
But unfortunately, President Trump has been ill-advised on so many issues.
Yeah, because he's got so many people in there who are not supposed to be advising him. I
would agree to that.
Yeah.
They're the people who are in there who are put in there to control him, not to advise him. And
right.
But the problem is what a lot of them don't seem to realize is that Donald Trump can actually think for himself. He didn't build a $9 billion empire by taking everybody's advice that he didn't like. He did what he wanted. And what was really one of the funniest things I actually heard driving back to Wisconsin from Los Angeles when you flip on the radio and you have no choice but to listen to the to whatever's on at the time, and I happened to catch early in the morning going through Colorado Glenn Beck show. I really don't like Glenn Beck. I think he's kind of a wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed, kind of like a douche. Call him feckless, like my cousin does. Call him feckless Beck. He changes his mind at the drop of a hat, not with it because he has more information that would cause him to change his mind, just because his feelings, might have gotten a little bit bent out of shape, but whatever. But listen to that guy the other morning when I was going through Colorado, which, by the way, is a very nice state to go through. I wouldn't want to live there. It's a great state. I mean, Colorado's got but it's just not me.
Okay.
I would love to go there. I would love to go there to hunt and ski and do all kinds of things. Like I said, Colorado's a great state, but it's just not for me. I want to live by the ocean. I love the ocean. But anyway, back on point. To listen to Glenn Beck sit there and start spouting off at the mouth and talking about like, I really don't. And by the way, this is almost exactly what he said. He said, I really don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not going to vote for you just because of that. I want somebody who is a hardcore constitutionalist. By the way, the word constitutionalist doesn't really exist. It's constitutionalist. So I heard that. I had to turn up the radio and try to listen to his rationale, which there wasn't one. And the only really thought that was going through my head listening to him say something like that was, where was he in 2008 and 2012 when Ron Paul was running? Because he bashed on Ron Paul, and Ron Paul, at least to me, was the only guy running for president who actually used the Constitution as a basis to make his judgments and to make his decisions on whether or not he should vote for a law or against it. And so, Glenn Beck, he just comes across to me as such a false little talking head. And, I had to hear this for across, many miles. And of course, I listened to the other ones like Rush Limbaugh, who, by the way, actually, I kind of like Rush Limbaugh a little bit, but I don't agree with him on everything. And then, of course, Sean Hannity. But But you get to listen to all that other part of it, and you're just kind of scratching your head trying to figure out where are you guys coming from on some of these issues. Yeah. And the fact that they agree with the fact that we're over in Syria, bombing Syria for whatever reason, because Afghanistan petered out, Iraq, is over. Afghanistan, that's been ongoing, but it's kind of fizzling a little bit because the CIA already controls the drug trade there. They're the ones importing the opium. So now we got to move on to Syria because we have nobody else left over there to bomb. So we have to make sure that the war machine, the military-industrial complex, keeps going, and we have somebody to keep buying the products that the military-industrial complex is putting out, and see just how many people can we kill. Granted, I was in the Marine Corps. I don't have a problem with killing somebody, as long as I have a legitimate reason to do it. Yeah. I'm not going to go over there and blow somebody. I don't want my politicians and everybody else to go over there and be voting for somebody to take military action against somebody, and I don't want my military guys going over there and killing people just to understand how something works. If this military piece of hardware that we just bought for $2 billion works the way they say it does. Right.
And you have to understand, Nick, that all of this goes back basically to KAL Flight 007, and the reason that we had 9/11, an inside job, was so that basically we could go into the Middle East and do all of these terrible things. Unfortunately, they're going to continue.
Well, we were doing that. We were doing this a long time before KAL flights too. We did that way back when we got rid of Mogadishu. What was the name? Mogadishu?
Yes, Premier Mossadegh was taken out in, I think, 1953.
Right. And the United States government installed the Shah. And
the reason that he was taken out was because he disputed what was then called Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which changed its name to British Petroleum, which is now BP.
Exactly.
And so BP said, well, let's bring back the Shah. And so the CIA cooperated with MI6, and lo and behold, the Shah came to power. You're absolutely right, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we they talk, and right now, what's really funny is that the Democrats, who are screaming their heads off now about foreign intervention into our election systems, never take a look at, turn that mirror back on the United States, and neither do the Republicans. And I have a real problem with the Republicans for not doing it either. They never look back at our country interfering in the internal workings of other countries as well. And everybody thought that the Iranians taking hostages back in 1979 when Jimmy Carter was there, by the way, who handled that really badly. But they never saw that for what it was. That was a retaliation for us installing the Shah, and eventually the Ayatollahs took over in Iran, and we couldn't figure out how to deal with that because we had a bunch of weak leaders to begin with during the 70s. Yeah. And plus we were dealing with Vietnam in the early part of the 70s, so we had that whole situation to deal with, which made the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds even more rich. Yeah. So people have to really, I think, change your perspective on things and understand that when we're dealing with things in a world situation, there are other people who are behind the scenes who are saying, we don't care how many people it kills. How much money do we get? We're going to war with somebody, and we're going to make heavier and bigger and more destructive machinery to do it. And
by the way, Russia hasn't just been sitting idle all of these years, nor China. I would say that their aircraft, their submarines, and and also their ICBMs are more advanced than what we may have as hardware at this stage.
Yeah, and it becomes, again, it's become this gigantic arms race between countries, and what people don't really sit back and look at is it's not an arms race between, okay, say us and Russia or us and China. It's an arms race between this company versus that company to see who can build a bigger bomb and make those countries buy it and spend it on the backs of the people that live there. I mean, you think that where does our government get money? Oh, well, they keep borrowing it from the Fed. Well, where does the Fed get their money from? Well, basically they get it from nowhere, but we as the taxpayers of this country, the working people, have to pay that money back at some point. Every time they fire a missile that costs $1.5 million, the United States citizens are in debt for another $1.5 million.
Right.
So,
and keep in mind that we do not have at this time, nor will we in the very near future, any missile defense system which can even defend us against North Korea.
No,
imagine,
and they're not even trying. They're not even trying to make a missile defense system that'll work. They're trying to make people believe that there is one. They're trying to keep people afraid. And then, of course, they're still, at the same time, they're doing all of this, trying to make us afraid of all these other countries and trying to create these armaments that are just absolutely ridiculous, that'll blow some stuff up. You have the internal workings of the United States where they're trying to use every excuse on the planet to disarm people in America. And a couple of days ago, I was listening again. I had a lot of time to listen to the radio. There's a leftist liberal lawyer guy named Bill Handel who has his own radio show, and I guess it's really popular. And he was on there discussing how they're trying to, once again in California, microstamp bullets and casings and everything. And what a great idea that would be, because then when somebody does something, somebody will find out who did it, and the police are all for it. And it's like, it doesn't realize, do you realize that how stupid that sounds? Because, number one, the criminals aren't going to go for it. They're not going to buy the ammunition that's stamped. They're going to get it from somewhere else. Sure. And then when they need to put a face on whoever did whatever shooting occurred, they're going to toss out random shells out there. So there's going to be a bunch of shells with serial numbers from people who never did anything to begin with, and the cops are going to go busting their doors down. It's going to turn into a big fiasco. So, so while they're busy, the leftists are busy out there saying, like, what a great idea it is to blow everybody else up. But, man, we got to disarm ourselves because those other countries never did it. Well, if you look back at history, yes, they did.
By the way, Nick, while the leftists are in the process of trying to disarm all law-abiding American civilians, practically every American, including myself up until a few days ago, was unaware that there is actually a so-called Red Army that is organizing. They're using the fully automatic weapons that they have at their disposal. And they intend to be a force to be reckoned with.
Here in the U.S.
Yeah. You go on the internet and you look up Red Army and you'll see pictures of these.
Oh no, I'm not. I don't doubt you one for a second, and I also don't doubt for 1 second that the Muslims that they're allowing to stream into this country, maybe not as bad as Europe, but they're coming in. I don't doubt that they do not have caches of weapons in their mosques, but because now they are a protected class of citizens, according to the liberal left, you're not allowed to say anything about it. And I know somebody personally who sat in a jail cell with somebody who was a Muslim, and he said every single mosque has a cache of weapons in it. These communists And that's exactly what the Democrat Party is. That's what the establishment is. They are still fighting the what was that called? That Karl Marx talked about the
manifesto.
No, yeah. Well, it was in the Communist Manifesto, but it was called the Dictatorship of the Proletariat.
Okay.
Which was an ongoing struggle for the proletariat to take over everything, and the idea behind it was never supposed to end. It was always going to be an ongoing conflict. It was something that George Orwell had wrote about in 1984, where it was perpetual war all the time, and it was always for a struggle.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing now is what the communists in the United States are doing. They're trying to overturn everything. When it blows up in the United States, simply because the way the United States was built compared to Russia back in 1915, 1916, it's going to be a hell of a lot worse. And why do you think Antifa is always out there doing what they do? And they never get in a hell of a lot of trouble for doing it. That's exactly like what the Bolsheviks and the brown shirts were doing during the 20th century. And then they get the money from George
Soros.
Oh yeah, are you kidding? Oh yeah, every bit. You think every bit of this wasn't funded by George Soros and a few of the other people? Yeah. I mean, they have been drooling over the overthrow of the U.S. Constitution ever since it was probably ever invented back in the 1700s. I mean, when the Communist Manifesto came out in the 1850s or 1860s, the people who were actually paid Karl Marx and Engels to write that book were just like going, okay, we got something going here, right. And we can overthrow anybody as long as we can turn them over to this.
Yes. If I may go back to the Muslims for a moment, I want to bring up something that
to the what?
To the Muslims, the Islamic people.
You gotta, John. You're gonna have to speak up. I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay. I hope this is a little better. Or I'll speak more loudly. During the Cold War, there was a fellow by the name of Yevgeny Primakov. Now, Primakov was a KGB officer that was sent and deployed to the Middle East. He understood Arab culture exceedingly well. He could speak Arabic fluently, and his main purpose was to recruit operatives in various countries in the Middle East. By that I mean mainly the Near East, like Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Libya, Iraq, mainly those countries, Sudan, Yemen. And after the Cold War ended, the Russians still had those operatives. Now, those operatives, I believe, are the so-called Islamic terrorists that we're hearing about, because they were very well trained, very well organized. Keep in mind that they were trained in China, the former Soviet Union, which included many nations besides Russia, Eastern European nations like Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, and even Cuba. And so these people were exceedingly well trained, and lo and behold, these are now the people that are mainly the terrorists in Europe and to a lesser extent coming into the United States. So we're not talking about just a typical Muslim. We're talking about a Marxist-trained Muslim who has developed the paradigm or the plan of the Soviet, and they are basically a force that we're going to be reckoning with very soon. on a large scale.
Yeah, and look what's happening within our government right now, especially with the Manafort trial, with Mueller's investigation,
yes,
with everything that they've done against Trump, because Donald Trump was the guy who was the outsider, who wasn't supposed to win, because obviously Hillary Clinton was supposed to, and the absolute explosion of the left when it didn't happen, because the left is essentially was a wing of the Communist Party anyway, or the communist movement anyhow. And so look at what's happened, and everything that even what you were just saying, everything that they're doing is all part of how the communists take over. It's how the communists did it in Russia back in the 1910s, 1950, 1917.
That's the break, guys.
All right.
Yeah, we'll come right back to it, and we'll give out your website too, John. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen, we're right back with the Granada Forum radio program. My co-host Nick Pearson, my producer Richard Kane, and John. Hold on. Okay. Welcome back to the Granada Forum radio program, ladies and gentlemen. And that was kind of interesting. Usually there was something else, but we're okay. Is everybody on? Hello?
Everyone is on, as far as I know. I think Nick's here.
Great.
I think John is here. Bob is here also.
Good. Oh, great. Fantastic. Okay. This is Revolution Radio. We are the #1 commercial-free, listener-supported internet talk radio station in the world. And we're also located at freedomslips.com. That's freedomslips.com and freedomradio.com. That's freedomradio.com. If you'd like to go to the homepage and live equivalent to a cup of coffee, we appreciate to keep the paid programming on the air. If you'd like to make a donation, maybe of $100, you can go to Nighthawk. He does a special thing for $100, like 3,500 seeds, and all the how to grow and plant and store food. So it's really kind of cool. If you'd like to do that, we appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Nighthawk, for that one too. It's always nice. And now, John, you want to give out your website in case somebody wants to email you maybe for some information on this?
Of course. It's rather lengthy, but I'll repeat it again. Sound Off with John W. Spring at Outlook.com. Again, that's Sound Off with John W. Spring at Outlook.com.
Okay.
And if they want to reach me by mail, Post Office Box 18946. That's Post Office Box 18946, Anaheim, California. Area code. Zip code 92817. I'm making mistakes all the time.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
John.
Oh, do you want me to repeat it again?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Okay. That's John W. Spring, Post Office Box 18946, Anaheim, California 92817. And my email address is soundoffwithjohnwspring at Outlook.com.
Okay,
and
great.
the reason I wanted to give out my mailing address was because I never know when they're going to take me off the Internet. I've been taken off 2 previous servers, and it seems like it's going to be only a matter of time because obviously the things I'm talking about are not politically correct.
There you go. Well, thank God we have a right to say it in the land of the free, home of the brave. There you go. I'm sure Nick is laughing on that one.
Yeah, it was
so,
great.
Yeah, you go.
Sorry. I came back late, but I had to step out, and
that's okay.
Some of that Burger King and McDonald's caught up with me, and I had to. There you go. Had to run real quick.
Yeah. Nature calls, yes.
By the way, now some topics. Do you have a topic you want to talk about, Nick?
Yeah, there was actually kind of a few, and it was a lot of topics that probably have been discussed ad nauseum on whichever mainstream media show you want to talk to, and it really does show the way that the mainstream media really doesn't report what you're talking about, and And it was the one that really stuck out to me was when I think it was the Washington Post put out an article and started blaming Donald Trump for the hurricane on the East Coast.
Okay, yeah, that one I would agree on.
Yeah,
That's
I mean
horrible.
it was just kind of like,
my God, it's Donald Trump's fault because there's a hurricane. Okay, yeah, okay.
Donald Trump is complicit, I think was the headline.
Oh, my Lord.
It's just like, it really does tell you, it's like, is there nothing that they're not, the mainstream media, the leftists,
that they won't blame on him?
Yeah,
that they won't blame on him.
And so then you have, but you have outlets like Alex Jones is the guy who's getting banned from all the social media. I'm surprised we haven't yet.
Right.
I'm surprised we haven't been kicked off the air. I'm surprised, that there's a few others that haven't been. But, I guess we don't, at this point, just don't have a big enough audience, and that's, and that's fine. But, we're trying to build it as we go. But at what point do we build an audience where we're not going to spout off the mainstream media talking points, where we get kicked off of everywhere also? So, there is this huge censorship going on within the big tech companies, and they of course they had the huge congressional hearing about it, and of course nothing is going to come of it because they're all in the same boat together. So which politicians that I wonder are going to actually do anything about it? I know Rand Paul is probably going to be on it. There's probably a couple others in the Freedom Caucus that are going to be on it, but they're vastly outnumbered by the guys who are taking all that lobby money to sit there and day after day listen to testimony and not do anything about it when it comes time to it. So, they are shutting down, not just, everybody calling, they're shutting down conservative. They're not just shutting down conservative viewpoints and conservative links and websites and all that. They're shutting down alternative, which is what I think Granada Forum is, because I don't think we lean left or right one way or the other. Well, I'll call anybody out on any side. I think Wendy will too, because she's had to deal with plenty of them as well. But the fact that the matter,
well, I just, one of the things that I've always said, I believe in truth and freedom, and everything else is biscuits. But it's just that I've always stuck to content, and I've always stuck to issue and facts. And
right.
If you do that, then you can always get contact and get issues and get some facts, and keep it really about the subject matter that you happen to be discussing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they're not interested. The problem is this is one of the problems. The journalism and the historical fact is being absolutely threatened on all levels. Yeah, physically, mentally, spiritually, absolutely. Because they're no longer interested in truth and freedom, as they're interested in confusion and lying, and they're interested in getting in their own way. Well, and it's no longer about people anymore. It's just about evil.
It's a real agenda that they're trying to push. And one of the things, I actually did have a good experience listening to Glenn Beck radio, if you can actually believe that. You could have a good experience doing that. He had on a guest a couple of days ago that we had on last year, which is Dr. Duke Pesta. We had him come on and talk about the Common Core program and why it was all messed up. And there's a video on our Granada Forum YouTube channel. You can watch that and listen to what he has to say. But he was also talking about something called transhumanism. I guess he also has a book about it, and he discusses this is the way everything is being manipulated into, is this thing called transhumanism. I don't understand. I don't understand what it is, but the way he described it is it's destroying everything that came before you. so that you can implement a new
it's machines and humans merging pretty much.
Right. And there's no family.
But it's not just so much machines and humans merging. It's changing the way people think about everything in order to become.
But the sky is no longer blue and the grass is no longer green. I got that. Yeah, absolutely.
But not just that. But the way he gave a prime example of somebody who was in his class. By the way, he's a professor at the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh. He's an English professor. I've met the guy. Wow. He's actually very, very smart guy, very likable guy. And when he asked them, this one girl who stood up and said, I don't understand what this is about. And she goes, well, what do you think it's about? Well, it's about white males hating women and how women are oppressed.
White males hating women. Oh, well, I love it.
And he goes, okay, well, have you even read this piece of Shakespeare literature? And she said, no. Okay. Well, here's a different piece of Shakespeare literature. What do you think about that? Well, obviously, it's about white males oppressing women. It's like, so you haven't read anything about them, but you already know what it's about. And she said, well, that's what I was taught. Exactly. That's what transhumanism is. You don't read or know anything about the subject you're talking about, but you already have an opinion on it. And it's a very destructive opinion. It's about destroying everything that came before you and conforming your new opinions and the new way you want everything to be according to the opinions that you've been indoctrinated into.
The hive mind.
Right.
Yeah, I want to get Dr. Duke Pest on this to explain this a little bit clearer. If I can get a hold of him again. He's going to be speaking at an event at the end of this month. Hopefully I can convince him to come on again. But transhumanism, it's just this really bizarre way of just ignoring everything that that came up before you, that made this country great. I'm going to use America as an example. That made this country great with Washington and Jefferson and all the founding fathers and some of the people that came after them that really believed that this country was what it was.
Well, Lincoln's one of them, too. John F. Kennedy, absolutely.
Smedley Butler, who was offered the opportunity to overthrow the government and instead told everybody what was going on,
Right.
And, things like that. And instead, they're teaching everybody, all that stuff is bad, and you have to believe that it's about people oppressing women. White males oppressing women because that's what it's like. Are you going to be kidding me that this is what's being taught? And I've had I spoke with him at the event that I actually met him at, and he was like, no, this is exactly what's happening. But I would, at some point, I'd love to get him on again and go into a little more detail on what this is. But it's like, you got to be kidding me. And this is what's going on in our education system. This is what's going on in not just in art. This is, that's where I knew transhumanism was with art. And it's, if you've ever seen transhumanist art, it's just like, you got to be kidding me that you would actually think that this is better than what Rembrandt did.
Or Picasso, so many others.
This is better than Picasso. And I'm not a big fan of Picasso either, but it's like, you got to be kidding me that you're painting two lines on a piece of paper and you're telling me that's the most brilliant piece of art you've ever seen in your life.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And I mean, it is like I said, and it's such a and that also too that none of the kids can think for themselves. It's only about opinion.
Yeah, they're not allowed to think.
It's not based on any facts or anything. It's just opinion.
Yeah, they're not allowed to think for themselves. One of the first things I always remember hearing about when the curriculum in schools started changing, and this was years ago, way before it became like a big mainstream agenda that we're dealing with now, was some kid in a Los Angeles school, and during a science class, was they had to do a science experiment. Now, when I did science experiments in school, and you probably did too, Wendy, and you, John, probably also as well, you did the science experiment, and you took notes. You know, you mixed chemicals together, or you made something happen, whatever. You took notes on whatever readings you were getting on the class equipment that you had available to you. And you, at the end of it, you said, well, what was the end result of your reaction? And you gave them that. And that was scientific. That was an experiment in science. Now, when this person came on to explain what they did in their science class, and I think this was during the 90s, they did the science experiment, and they were like, okay, no, they asked the teacher of the class, oh, what are we supposed to do? It's like, they gave him a piece of paper and said, how did you feel about doing the experiment? It's like, well, what is that supposed to teach me? You know, I don't, you know, it really didn't, I didn't care about it one way or the other.
Wasn't that called the out-based education that they brought in?
I think that was, I think that was like I think that was the early stages of Common Core.
Yeah,
But you know, the kid did not learn anything from doing the experiment about, you know, how chemicals react with each other, or, you know, whatever the experiment was at the time. But the fact is, how did you feel about it? I was like, well, it's like, what do you care? You're a damn student. Your feelings don't come into account. You're supposed to learn this stuff and figure out what your feelings are later on in life. So, because nobody who knows anything really cares about your feelings. You know, but they're asking this kid who's a kid in high school, how did you feel about it? Well, you know, I felt intimidated because, you know, I think this is a really gender biased kind of experiment. You know, that's the kind of reaction you're going to get now. Yeah. It wasn't gender fluid enough for me, you know, or some nonsense that you're going to get as a reaction today, you know. And so instead of kids learning anything, they're getting into this, and it's like, we're going to seriously, I think, I don't remember who's the one who said it. He said, all it takes for you to lose your liberty is one generation.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, and I absolutely
believe freedom is a real big issue.
Yeah, and we're seeing it now. We're losing our liberties because the communists, and this is something that Khrushchev said in the United Nations when he beat his shoe on the table. We are going to take over your schools. We are going to take over your education. We're going to take over your public institutions. And we're seeing the results of it now. I mean, when somebody like that idiot out of the Bronx in New York, Cortez, beats a long-term incumbent Democrat to get a seat in the House of Congress, and when she's questioned about, okay, well, how would you propose, you know, economics and or foreign relations or anything, she has absolutely no damn idea what she's talking about. She's like one of the biggest morons on the planet when it comes to anything like that.
Not only that, she did a photo shoot or some kind of interview or something like that, and she had like a $3,500 in gear on, like in suit, like a suit. For a commie, right? For a socialist.
She's not a person of the people. Her family was actually affluent. Her parents actually worked very hard to move into a nicer neighborhood than what she's pretending to represent. You know, but she spouted off all the right socialist propaganda, and they elected her over some Democrat who's been there for forever. I don't have a problem getting rid of some incumbent who's been there for forever, who's outlived their usefulness, but seriously, that.
Well, what's amazing to me is that these people don't even bat an eye or don't mind lying one little bit. I mean, like, lying is just nothing to them. It's just it's like breathing. You know, it's breathing for them.
That's part of their mentality. That's breathing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever watch like some of the opinions of current Democrat leadership now, and what they were saying, like, not even like 5 years ago, they're saying exactly the opposite, you know, of what they were saying back then. It's whatever gets you into power. You know, I mean, Nancy Pelosi, I mean, you could go back through her entire career and you see her change her opinion like 100 different times, and none of it was based on any new information that she got. It was always like, how do I get elected into office again?
Yes. The same was true with Dianne Feinstein, who used to speak out very strongly against illegal aliens and illegal immigration.
Oh, yeah. It's the same thing. It's all about power to them. And that's
her latest stunt with, pulling out this thing from the Kavanaugh, judge thing and saying
that letter that they got?
Yeah, from 35 years ago or something, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, and a letter that's written by anonymous, doesn't want to be doesn't want to create controversy, so don't contact me about it or anything.
Right, yeah.
Don't make it public. I'm just letting you know what's going on. Well, Dianne Feinstein said, sure, I'll take the letter. Oh, by the way, I'm making it public. I'm giving it to the FBI. We're not going to make a big deal about it. And it's the same crap that they did with who was that black Supreme Court justice? Not too long ago. He's still sitting on the bench.
What's his face?
No, not what's his face. What's his name?
No, I know. Hold on. It's I know. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Well, he was the one that they came up with. The pubic hair on the Coke can.
Yes, and
that kind of thing. They're playing. They're playing on. This is the one thing I also was listening to Rush. I got to give credit where credit is due. They're playing out of the same playbook that they always do. When they have nothing left, this is what they're going to come up with.
Like they're making up stuff now. Now they're just and making up stuff is part of they just make it up, and then they try to tell people it's facts. They go, dude, you just made it up.
Oh, it was Thomas. Thomas was the name
Thomas.
of it.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Thank you.
But
Clarence Thomas. Yes.
When they don't have anything else, they go back to the old playbook and they play the same games over and over and over again. Okay, so Feinstein handed to the FBI, and the FBI was like, well, what the hell are we supposed to do with this? And they kind of tossed it in the trash. I'm not going to give my name, but Kavanaugh locked me in a room one time. Please don't tell anybody about this. And I was eventually able at a drunken high school party, and I was able to get out, but please don't tell anybody about this. I was like, what kind of a letter is that just appeared out of nowhere, apparently?
Right. I totally agree.
Before we go on, can I say something about Kavanaugh? That was another thing that I was going to bring up tonight. Now, as you know, I'm fairly conservative, but I do like to probe and do thorough investigations as best I can, do as much research as possible about a person like Kavanaugh, who's going to be a Supreme Court justice.
Okay.
And what I found out was rather remarkable about him in certain respects. Did you know that he was actually George W. Bush's closest confidant?
I knew he had dealings with the Bushes. I also knew that he was a lawyer for the Clintons at some point. So I'm not 100% sold on the guy.
Well,
isn't it also too? Go ahead, John. Finish up with John.
What I want you to realize is that he has made a name for himself by being involved with the Clinton impeachment. He's been given the opportunity to participate in a very noticeable manner in so many things. But when you find out a little bit more about him, you wouldn't want to trust him with anything. I realize that sounds contrary, but keep in mind what I said earlier about Dr. Condoleezza Rice. He worked very closely with Dr. Condoleezza Rice, as did John Bolton and one other fellow. And keep in mind, you only had a few individuals who were basically working on 9/11 within the White House. I would not recommend Kavanaugh to anyone.
No, I'm not. I don't blame you. I'm not going to argue with you on that. I think you're. I think you're actually right.
No,
but what I was pointing out was like the hypocrisy going on. If the leftists don't get somebody who's a full-blown communist like Ruth Bader Ginsburg or something, or Elena Kagan or whatever, they're going to scream and holler and try to tear them down. But but you also got to look at it like this: the way their shifting attitudes are. Look at what happened with John McCain. That whole fiasco with John McCain. John McCain finally died. By the way, I was happy. I cracked a beer and toasted his death, and all I wanted to know is where is his grave so I could go pee on it. But look what happened when he died. All the media that used to like rip into that guy on a regular basis, all they did was praise him. What a great guy John McCain was. What an awesome guy John McCain was. He was such a guy who crossed over the aisles. He didn't cross the aisles. He went over there and ran across the aisles. Open arms. He was a liberal Democrat. Okay, he was totally. He only ran as a Republican all the time on his military record. By the way, I was in the Hanoi Hilton for 5 years, and he did that and he milked that narrative for 30 years or however long he was in office, and did everything he could do to take down the country. And Donald Trump recently, and he was a scumbag. I'm sorry, people may like the guy. I thought he was a scumbag.
Yeah. By the way, Deborah Tavarov's husband was on board the U.S. Enterprise when John McCain pulled off that accident, which...
No, that wasn't the Enterprise. That was the Forrestal.
I'm sorry. The Forrestal. Right. He was on the Enterprise during the Cuban Missile crisis. You're absolutely right.
I'm not even going to lay that. I mean, as much as I dislike John McCain, I don't know if I can even lay that accident at his feet, because I don't know if there was actually enough evidence to do it, or was there?
Well, another thing too, you have to do some research on that. But I do know when he ran for president, there was a website called Vietnam Veterans Against John McCain, and you can actually go look that up. I did not make that up, and they had stuff. I mean, they did their homework.
Yeah, there were guys who were in the Hanoi Hilton with him who absolutely hate the guy. He went and bragged. He went and bragged about. I stayed behind while other people went home, and I was so disappointed in them. They were the cowards to me. Meanwhile, he stayed behind because he was feeding information to the North Vietnamese army.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have, I'm not saying he didn't get tortured. He didn't, he didn't do any of that, and didn't have to suffer through being a prisoner of war. But, when he decided to roll over, things became a little bit lighter for him, I think. And I think the other real prisoners of war took notice of it.
Yeah. It was alleged that he turned on his fellow officers.
He was not. John McCain was never anybody who you thought he was.
Oh no!
I don't want to keep going on about the guy because I don't want to
lionize him or
demonize him. But
one thing more about Kavanaugh. What's so ironic, as you pointed out exceedingly well, Nick, is that the Democrats are going after him for the wrong reasons. And if they would go after him for the right reasons, I could respect them, because he is probably scumbag, just like the aforementioned individual.
Right.
But unfortunately, they put us into mass hysteria and don't follow any logic, because that's exactly what they're training this younger generation in school to adopt. It's very frightening.
Right.
And I think one of the things too that let's see, Bob, are you on by chance?
Bob? I think Bob is listening. I don't think he can speak to us.
Well, isn't it true when Hillary Clinton was being when she was at a congressional hearing, when her famous line is, "What difference does it make?" This is the Secretary of State stating, "What difference does it make?"
Yeah. By the way, wasn't
that on Benghazi?
Yeah, that was the whole Benghazi thing because they're already dead. They're dead.
Right.
So what difference does it make now?
Right, and this is the not just liberal, but this is the disinformation, and this is the lies. What difference does it make? Because we don't need to tell the American people anything. What difference does it make?
No, I don't think it was I think it was more of a deflection than anything else because she did not want to answer any questions. I mean, that would be asking her and Bill like, "Hey, what happened to that $5 billion that went to the Haiti relief? What difference does that make?" Well, I think it makes a hell of a lot of difference to the people in Haiti. You know, what happened? What happened to the people in the Ambassador Stevens and the other Navy guys, the Navy SEALs who were in Benghazi? What difference does it make? Well, I think it makes a hell of a lot of difference to their families. Okay, and I think it makes a hell of a lot of difference to national security and a whole bunch of other things that she sold us out on.
Right. Now, you may recall, Nick and Wendy...
Wait, John, wait.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Go
ahead.
You may remember when she was running for president against Obama, she made this statement. She said, "Whether it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you can count on me." Well, it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and the people in Benghazi couldn't count on her because if she had taken appropriate action, they'd be alive today. Because
we
had the fleet
of course.
right off
well. No, wait. In all fairness,
what's her second?
In all fairness, she did not say what they could count on her for.
Okay, wait a second. And what is her second famous line? What is her second famous line? We came. How did that go? How does that go, Nick? I know Bob knows about it.
We saw he died.
He saw. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wish Bob was listening. I mean, he was on the phone. He'd be great right now.
She's really unbelievable that she thinks that anybody actually believes her anymore. And I love what's her name, Laura Loomer, for going to her book signings and ripping her apart.
Lois Loomer definitely had some Kionas for that one, and stuck to journalistic and historic fact. Yeah,
it's really funny that Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, I honestly believe that when she stepped aside for Barack Obama, I really believe she was promised, "You're next. You are going to be the president. Let this guy pave the way." And then, But when she lost to Donald Trump, this is what the hysteria is about. Is the fact she was absolutely supposed to be the president of the United States right now, and she lost to Donald Trump.
Right, and the two things that the real issues about this, Nick, too. You had this 8 years of Obama and the Clinton, part of being the Secretary of State
can you imagine?
But during this 8 years, you got Obamacare. They gave $29 trillion to the bankers. The country was literally on its knees. American people, for whatever reason, you have to listen to this, Nick. For whatever reason, said, things as bad as they are, there's no way in hell we're voting for you. And they voted for Donald Trump, or they voted Libertarian, but they voted anyone but her, and she could not handle it. And the New World Order, face it, they have been, they just physically, mentally, and spiritually, they are so freaked out that the American people, for whatever kahunas we have left, or whatever the states, the people in Nebraska, people in Florida, Carolinas right now, which I hope everything's going okay with them, because I know they've got the the hurricane, and other states and republics in our country. They stood up to be counted for because they did not want any more murder, rape, or mayhem, because they actually had enough. And this is really the downfall, and to show you how the Clinton and the Obama administration, what these people really did.
Well, and it's also very telling to see how much, if you look at just, not even just like the street protests, like Antifa, who are a bunch of clowns anyway.
Oh God!
But the organizer, all the people who are organizing all of that, and you have the mass protests within the Democratic Party and all the things that were going, plus of course all the media saturation that we're getting against Trump. Oh, by the way, in case you didn't realize it, the hurricane is Donald Trump's fault. How much money is coming down, and if you sit back for like 10 minutes and just watch all of this happening, you gotta, the light bulb, the gerbil in your head's got to get back on the wheel. The light bulb's got to go on, and you got to sit back and go like, there's a lot of money coming down somewhere to try to derail Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And getting Alex Jones off of all the social media platforms, and all the conservatives off the social media platforms, which, by the way, are the new town square. So, if you're out there screaming with a bullhorn, man, you're the town crier.
Right. And I give kudos to Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Absolutely. He's pounded the pathway for many years.
He was like
historically and journalistically, he has held the light for a long time. There's other people that have come forward now, which is great. But Alex Jones, good for him. I mean, listen, Alex Jones deserves the credit that he's got, because he's pounded the paveway for the last 15 years at least, maybe 20, but 15 for sure.
Over 20. I remember seeing info when I got my first computer back in 1998.
There you go.
With the dial-up, and the
right when it was what was American Online.
Well, it had my computer had the big box, and it had the big screen on it. The cathode ray tube.
Yeah, American.
Yeah, that weighed like 100 pounds, and for some reason, when I was searching the internet, which took like 100 years to do, Infowars popped up. Because of the way I was searching for stuff, and it was like there wasn't really much to it. It was just kind of like, hey, take a look at this article and that article, and it was many years later because I had to do some stuff because I was going to school at the time, that I got back on the internet, and the internet had wound up going so much faster at the time. It's like, hey, I remember this guy.
Oh yeah. And I'd probably say the other guy, too, would definitely be the Jeff Rents, because Jeff Rents has had a show for many, many years.
There's
and tremendous amounts of guests. And you can go to Rents.com on that one.
There are so many people who are precursors to what Infowars did and what we're doing now. And we got to take our hat off to none of them are mainstream media. None of them are CBS, NBC, CBS. CNN especially, everything. They all the stuff that, even Granada Forum exists because, the stuff that you did during the 90s when you used to have.
Yeah. Well, we led the pit. We did. We led the way in some areas too, and I'm very grateful for this. And Nick, listen to me. As long as the truth and freedom and free speech and in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights stay together and it stays intact. That is our common bond for all Americans, and it doesn't matter about party, but that is the common bond for all America.
Right, and in case anybody didn't know what I was referencing to, was back in the 90s, and if you look at some of the videos, if you can go on Granada Forum and look on YouTube, you can see some of the live videos from the early days where Wendy was doing Granada Forum before I got involved in it. was they used to have like it was just like a meeting. It actually rented out a meeting hall.
We yes, and then we our speakers like Dr. Stan, who was phenomenal, and Dr. Stanley Monteith and Ted Gunderson.
Yeah,
and God, who's the woman I'm thinking about right now? On I can't.
They would come
in
and speak in front of an audience.
And and we would talk about all these issues in person, and absolutely, and just amazing things that we did do when we were able to pull it off. And once a month, twice a month, we'd have meetings and bring in speakers from all over the world to speak on various subject matters because we did believe in truth and freedom. And it was
and it was great, and it was really funny too because I met Wendy. I met Wendy when we got involved with the Republican Party during the Ron Paul days. During that whole thing, and she comes up to me at one of the meetings. It's like, I want you to be on the radio with me. I'm like, okay, sure. And I started doing this radio. I started doing the radio show with her, and I'm just like going like, okay, what the hell did I just step into?
There you go. I wanted to send you down another foxhole for the rest of your life.
but to me, it was
the rest of your life, Nick.
To me, it was great because I had already been doing all this other research and ahead of time with all the others, with not just Ron Paul, but with with a bunch of the other things that I had no idea, and I was just like blowing my own mind out with all the research I was doing, but. When you came up to me at that one meeting and said, I want you to be on my radio show, I was like, okay, sure. What are we doing? And it just kind of took off from there. And I'm like, I became very protective of it too.
I know.
Oh, by the way,
go ahead,
Wendy.
John.
By the way, I was one of your guest speakers on a few
Yes, you were, John. You were definitely at Granada Forum, absolutely.
Really?
And we had you. Oh yeah. John spoke once or twice.
Okay.
On some subject matter.
Several times.
And I think there you go. And I think too, this is an interesting thing too, guys, is that Alex Jones. This is just an example for Alex, but Infowars.com, ladies and gentlemen. But by the way, when Donald Trump ran, Alex got him on a show, and they literally thought they owned 2, 4, and 7. That mainstream media is the way to go about it, but they didn't realize that. At that time, there's other alternative media ways of going about things,
right?
And the mainstream media does not hold the narrative anymore. I'm sorry, they don't. And this is what they're going crazy about.
No, and they're mad. Yeah, they are bent out of shape about it. The fact that they can't influence that much of the American public anymore, because way back in the day, it was ABC, CBS, and NBC, and that was it. Okay, and then when the internet exploded, this is why they're trying to really shut down the internet as much as they are, is because there are so many other media outlets out there. Alex Jones was the pioneer, I think, in a lot of it. But there's so many others out there.
And I agree, and I agree that he was able to get on the internet when it really needed, and when internet was, face it, just like a baby. But he got on it, he stuck with it. And he, listen, Alex Jones, Infowars.com, make no mistake, but Alex has he does have a media network, and this is why they're so losing their mind that he has a media network.
I think they are petrified of the guy. They're always cutting him down. I mean, I saw this years ago. Where every time he got some really mainstream media attention, they immediately cut him down first, and then they went on to the news article. I always thought the guy was great myself. I loved his style. I thought getting up in somebody's face was always a great thing to do. But when you get beyond his persona and you start actually reading the articles and stuff on his website and listening to what the people that he's hired have been saying and everything, and the way they present their news articles, it's like, that's actually real news because they're actually telling you stuff. The mainstream media are now propagandists. Okay, they become.
I totally agree.
Yeah,
it's nothing but lies and propaganda. I agree.
Yeah, they've become the propaganda outlets. ABC, NBC, CBS, and all their affiliates are now the propaganda outlets.
Right.
Not just InfoWars, but there's a bunch of others because and they're not getting rich off of this. I mean, people like Dan Dix with I think Press for Truth, Luke Radowski with We Are Change. There's a bunch of other people who have a YouTube presence. I mean, those two guys I know because I've seen them. But they're the guys who are out there actually getting out there and showing what mainstream media won't, because mainstream media is going to go out there and put a really beautiful woman up there and tell you, hey, guess what? It's going to rain today. And it's like, okay, great. Well, what happened over here? Well, we're so disappointed that something happened, and we're going to cry for about 2 seconds, and then we're going to tell you how wonderful tomorrow is going to be. So we're going to smile. And it's like, you know what? Guess what? I like looking at beautiful women too, but man, if you're talking to me like I'm a 2-year-old, I'm not listening to you at all. I'll look at you and I'll be like just like a red-blooded American male. I'll be like, I love you, but I'm gonna go over here to get my. I'm gonna go over here. Yeah, I'm gonna go over here to get my information. Okay, I'm gonna go over to you and look at you like, hey, guess what? I'm opening up a Playboy magazine because I don't really care what your opinions are.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something that.
Yeah, but the thing is that what I've been noticing is in Los Angeles is the hub of a lot of that. That's how they've been really changing the format of a lot of the mainstream media news shows. And when it comes to shows like any alternative media, not just Alex's, but Alex, you have to mention Alex because he has become the lightning rod for all of this.
Yeah, absolutely, sure. And I give the gentleman the credit for what he's done, and hey, I'm cool with it. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have an ego over it. I mean, I know like now there's George Webb who does certain things. Of course, Crowdsource the Truth.
Let's not forget like George Webb and Jason Goodman, who have been everything. They've been putting out all these videos and information. I mean, it wasn't it George Goodman who actually talked to the guy who found all those smashed up Blackberries and everything that from Hillary
because on the Awan case, he's definitely George Webb on the Awans is one of the guys that led the way from lots of information.
Media on that? Where was NBC, ABC talking reporting on that?
Listen, the thing on the Awans is unbelievable. That story alone.
Yeah, that kept buried.
Never ending. That story, I mean, half the Congress, half the Senate was being blackmailed. The DNC paid for the Awans to do it. I mean, it's and also too, I have to say that Jeff Sessions has dropped the ball with the Awans. So there's major subject matter going on there.
Jeff Sessions dropped the ball the day he got in office. And
lots of things going behind the scenes.
Listen. I mean, maybe we're not out there pounding the pavement as hard as some of these guys. I really wish I could, but you got to give credit off to all the alternative media guys who are out there who are doing this.
Drudge is good. Drudge is good. And what is that? There's Mike Dice and
Mike Dice is brilliant. Mark Dice is
he's been doing things for years. He would go up to people on street at the beach or something. I mean, it's just
they're trying to take him down as well.
I know.
All these guys who show up at the Bilderberg meetings, guys who show up at wherever the elitists are showing up, the globalists are showing, and they're showing up there, and they're showing how everything is being kept secretive away from everybody else. And they're going in there and they're doing their thing and they're whatever. They're probably using little crappy camcorders or cell phones or whatever. Those are the guys, the ones you want to watch, because what they're doing is it has not got a media spin on it. It's like, here's the video. Here's the video of what's going on. This is not edited interview in a room with a couple of a couple of lights where I'm going to ask you a loaded question, preloaded questions that are going to make you look good. Here's the video of you screwing the rest of the world. Those are the guys you listen to.
And another two people I'd probably mention too would be who've paid the way to Jordan Maxwell's been on. He's a guy that's done tremendous. You can go to jordanmaxwellshow.com.
Yeah, I love Jordan. Yeah, Jordan's always great.
And Jordan. And another thing too, Brian Hall of ConspiracyCon, because he was doing conferences before anybody else. Go to conspiracycon.com. And Victoria Jack, the UFO, the Bay Area UFO Expo. Check them out, the Bay Area UFO Expo. Look, there's a lot of people that paid the pavement for many, many years, and I'm sure some people that we haven't mentioned, which it's not that we've done this on purpose, but there's so many. Thank God for media. Thank God for Thank God for the internet and the alternative media, because it has held the New World Order and the cabal. Right. Because they don't completely own everything, and they don't completely have complete control over everything.
Right. Well,
to somewhat of it's been a fight back. Thank God that we've had this, because for physically, mentally, and spiritually, that they don't control it completely is because there is alternative media that gets out there and tells the truth and is basing it on facts and not fiction.
Right, and that's the kind of the point that I'm trying to make here, is that they are trying to shut it down. They are trying to shut. They're trying to shut down alternative media. And like I said, which is why I mentioned Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a lightning rod. If they can shut him down as much as they did, can you imagine what's going to happen to everybody else? You're never going to get a dissenting opinion. It's going to be 1984, where you might get one side of the coin to the other side of the coin, but the conclusion is always going to be the same. As long as you follow the line that they want you to follow, then you're going to be good. As soon as you step off the line, hey, it's room 101 for you. So, we got to make sure that, and do everything we can to make sure that these media sites say, and that was the real big thing that really drove me nuts with net neutrality. Everybody thought net neutrality was such a great thing. And it's like, well, because it keeps all these lines of communication open. It's like, no, it doesn't.
They wanted to close all the lines of communication open.
Yeah, net neutrality,
close them because they didn't want them open.
Yeah, people have to read.
It was the opposite effect, right?
Yeah, people.
And that's the perception that they gave, though, that you need net neutrality, but net neutrality really was nothing but to close doors.
Yeah, that's exactly the way you have to read some of these.
It's like the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Rich. You're so correct on that one. So right on that.
Yeah, you have to read these bills the way they write them, and not the way that they title them, because every time they usually title them, the title is exactly the opposite of what the bill is going to do. And correct. And I learned that a long time ago. I think, Wendy, you did too, going through the political process in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It was so ridiculous with some of the stuff that would come up with.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you're still involved with it. And unfortunately, at some point, I might be again. Please don't make me do it, but.
Well, I love it. There you go. You're paying for your sins now. We're going to make you do it. Oh, God. Oh, that's too good.
What really bothers me most, though, is the fact that I actually have to be involved in it this much. It's like I shouldn't have to be. We should be electing people into office that should be looking out for
merit,
but they don't. They never do. They always turn. Even here where I live now in Wisconsin, we got people here who are just, they turn on you on like that quick. As soon as they get elected, they're like, yeah, I love all of you. Oh, by the way, give me some money and I'll screw every one of them over.
Oh my
Republican,
God.
Democrat, it doesn't matter.
I know.
And that's why I really, really do believe the philosophy of George Carlin. I don't vote. You know why? It doesn't matter who you vote for. You're still going to get screwed.
Yeah. Well, also, too, George even, I believe it's Carlin who said, oh, God, what was his famous line? You're never going to be part of the club.
Yeah.
That was one of his lines.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
And you ain't in it. Yeah, and you ain't in it. Yeah,
not part of the big club.
Yeah. And you ain't in it.
I mean, I swear to God, everybody thought that guy was just a comedian, but man, that guy was smart.
No, he's definitely Carlin was definitely ahead of his time, and it showed in a lot of ways, and that's why he was so successful, and that's why, when he would do stand up, he would literally, his shows would sell out, Nick.
I no kidding. Well, because he wasn't doing just like set up punchline, set up punchline type of jokes.
No,
he was doing like, here, let me say something that's funny, but now you got to think about it.
Oh, let me show you why,
Bill Hicks,
and how, and when. He's interesting.
Bill Hicks, when Bill Hicks was in his prime, he was doing exactly the same thing. Let me say something, and now think about what I just told you. And I've seen I've seen a few other comedians who are the same way, where they'll say something and they'll make you laugh, but then when you sit back and you're thinking about it, you go, "Hey, wait a minute, that guy just said something pretty damn smart," But
right.
But George Carlin, he actually carved the way for, we were talking about earlier, the pioneers who paved the way for something like Granada Forum or the rest of us who are a little bit smaller than they are, but George Carlin, George Carlin and maybe probably Lenny Bruce was probably the guys who carved the way for some of those comedians who aren't just doing setup and punchline type of jokes, but they were setting you up to like, look, I'm going to say something. It's probably going to be pretty funny. You're going to laugh about it, but think about what the hell I just told you. Those kind of things.
Right.
So now here we are in Granada Forum, and we got our. And actually, I think Granada Forum was probably pre-Alex Jones anyway.
Yeah, we were, and we were, and we were. And listen, I'm very grateful to Ralph and Ron Branson, and
right.
and those guys, and absolutely.
But it was still like here. But here you are saying like, okay, look, here's what's going on. Even before anywhere before I was involved in it, here's what's going on. Will you somebody please listen? And that's the whole point of alternative media is like, will you turn off the mainstream media. I mean, love the pretty girl who's giving you the weather, but here's what's really going on.
Right. There you go. We're giving you facts and real news and truth. There you go.
Right.
Hey, guys, thank you for another round of the Granada Forum. I'd like to thank my co-host, Nick Pearson, Krista King, my wonderful producer, and I'd like to thank John and everyone who is listening out there. Thank you so much, and God bless. We'll be back next week with Deborah Tavares for www.stopthecrime.net. We'll see you then, and God bless.
See ya.